On today's episode, I am sitting down with world-renowned Hera cosplayer Xena Duncan. We are going to be talking about Jacen Syndulla, the future of this character, why so many people are interested in him. We're also going to break down The Last Jedi hate. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Does it matter? And then we're going to go over some fan questions. This is Nerds Talk Star Wars. Let's do this thing. And then my cheesy intro music plays here. Dun, 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 dun. What's up, everybody? I hope you're having a fantastic Star Wars Sunday. I wanted to chime in very quickly because this video is going to be cut up a little bit. Xena and I literally spoke for over an hour and 15 minutes, and I like to keep these videos between a half hour and 40 minutes. So I edited a lot of this down. The full interview, which goes into all sorts of thoughts. Xena's very opinionated. She has a lot of thoughts. The female perspective, I thought it was very, very cool. But if you want to get the full interview with Xena, please go check it out on the Patreon. It'll be up exclusively for a little while, and then I will publish it to everyone after a couple days. So you can check the whole thing out on Patreon, even if you're not supporting us. So go check that out. Also, at the end of the video, I do the fan questions, and I do those by myself because, like I said, my interview with her just went really, really long. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Nerds Talk Star Wars, and make sure you stay to the end to get fan questions. What is up, YouTube? It's Josh. This is the Den of Nerds. You're hanging out with us on a Sunday night, just a casual night where we talk about Star Wars. I am here with, as I said, world-renowned, prolific Hera cosplayer, Xena Duncan. Xena, what's going on?
It's all right. How are you?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. We did a little video before this talking about our first meeting. That's up on Patreon for all you Patreon supporters. Shameless plug. Go check out the Patreon. But so briefly, just to kind of explain, Xena and I met at Star Wars Celebration last year, and she saved my life. It's a really interesting story. You should go check it out. Xena, before we get into the topics and everything, I want to talk a little bit about what you do. Because you're a cosplayer, you're also a costume designer. You've worked on Star Wars films, which I found very interesting when we met in Celebration. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your involvement with Star Wars, your fandom?
Okay. Yeah, so I work in the film industry here in the UK, in costume specifically. So I've been in industry for nearly a decade now, which is horrifying. And I worked on The Last Jedi as a costume buyer. So I was working with Michael Kaplan, the costume designer, and the makers and the illustrators and everyone really, to help dress the galaxy and bring it to life, which was amazing because it was obviously a childhood dream job. Because I have been a massive Star Wars fan for literally my entire life. And then discovering the prequels, well, when the prequels came out was when I discovered that people made films. There were people who made costumes and put them on people and stuff. And so from there, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I did. And here I am. Yeah. And now I cosplay. It's basically a busman's holiday. So, you know, I help people with costume in work and I make costumes in my free time. And sometimes I sleep.
Yeah, sometimes, occasionally, right? Real quick, too, this is just a little sort of inside baseball thing. Explain to the American viewers how to use the word pants properly from your perspective.
Well, for one thing, pants are your underwear. So careful, guys, because we call them trousers. And
Wow.
then, you know, things a bit rubbish, you know, not great, not good. It's a bit meh. It's a bit pants.
Yeah.
Number of ways. The way they handled the romance in the last season was weird. It was heavy on the melodrama and it didn't really fit in with what they've done so far and things that they've talked about so far. So as far as I'm concerned, they started getting it on. They started doing the do maybe like a year after they met. So it's been like 9 years that they've been getting it on.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But you know, it could be anything. So
it's an interesting question because, like, you know, reading New Dawn and sort of like, you know, getting some vibes in there because that's, you know, a story that predated Rebels, and then watching throughout Rebels, I'll be honest, like I thought that it could be there, but it wasn't obvious. Like I didn't think they were knocking boots, to be honest. Like
Really?
yeah, like
For me, like that first scene, 'cause I came into Rebels completely blind. I knew nothing about it. All I knew is that I saw the DVD of Spark of Rebellion, the first episode, in a shop when I was in a mad rush, and I was like, that looks terrible. But got a green Twi'lek on the front, and I like Twi'leks, and she looks cool, and she's wearing like a full outfit and everything. So I picked it up, and I eventually just shoved it on because I wanted background noise. And in that first scene with Hera and Kanan in Spark of Rebellion, where she's flying and he's all like, "Oh, there's this kid who's being really annoying," and she's like, "Spill, tell me what happened." From that scene, one, I fell in love with the Rebels. Two, I fell in love with Hera, and three, I was like, these guys are like that. They're a couple. Yeah, definitely.
See, I guess for me it was just a little bit different because and this could just be because I'm male. Sometimes males can be daft, and we just, you know what I mean? Like we need it to just be spelled out for us. But I was like, no, they're friends. You know what I mean? Like they're homies. And of course, there's undertones, right? But considering that it's a kids show, so basically, what you're saying is you think that it was an ongoing thing. It just wasn't sort of explicitly out there because it's all.
Well, it's explicit though. It didn't feel like this deep secret. There's that short they did when they were introducing all the characters before the show began, and the two are like in there, and they've just got this like the two characters. I mean, one of my favorite tropes is the battle couple trope, where it's two characters who are, you know, they're in a relationship, they're completely trusting of each other, they've got this incredible grounded mutual respect for each other, and they've got each other's backs. They work through things, they talk through things, like it's just, you know, it's perfect. And that's like, for me, that's embodied in Hera and Kanan. And it doesn't need to be all smooshy, romantic, melodrama stuff. Just having these two characters who are so obviously intimate, like they intimately know each other. He knows about her past, she knows about his past. She knows a lot about his past, which is remarkable. And then just the way they present with each other on screen, like there's intimacy there that's more than friendship. And then there's, I mean, it might not necessarily be like a sexual thing, but there's definitely a romantic thing, and has always. And I will fight to my grave about this.
Nice. I love it. I love it. So let me ask you this then. When they had the moment where she says, "I love you," so, you know, if what you're saying is true, then it was more of that the battle romance sort of thing, that it wasn't necessarily love. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
They're the battle couple is not about like the passion of battle. It's not like Speed, you know, intense. I can't remember what the line from Speed is, but you know, intense, stressful situations creating romance. More that they know each other so well that they work like in this amazing synchronization. They've got this unspoken understanding. For me, the whole like the declaration, I mean, Jedi Knight for me was really deeply upsetting, not because of the obvious spoiler alert Kanan dying, but because of the way Hera was treated. Yeah, it really messed me up. But the whole declarative love thing for me felt really out of character because it was sort of a melodramatic. It was more of a Han and Leia moment than a Hera and Kanan.
Okay.
So it didn't really work for me. But one theory that I've seen is that because she keeps on trying to say to him that I need to tell you something, and he keeps being like, I need to tell you something. And one theory that I've seen floating around is that it's not actually about him dying or that she loves him. It's actually about the baby. Because obviously she was pregnant at this point, which is a whole other thing because Hera was tortured and drugged when she was pregnant, and the only person who knew about that was Dave Filoni. So I got words for you, Dave Filoni.
Oh, Dave.
Be afraid. So yeah, so the idea that they both like individually know that she's pregnant, Hera because she is pregnant, and Kanan because he can sense it through the Force, and so that's what it is. And then the "I love you" is more of an affirmation than a declaration. And it still doesn't really like salvage the episode for me or the weird melodrama that they're doing. But it, for me, is like the only way that I can handle the mess of Jedi Knight.
That's interesting. You know what? I think this. Let's take this in just another direction, just because I'm kind of interested. I'm sort of picking up some vibes from you. So let me just ask you this: how do you think that this last season and sort of the finale of the episode was handled? Because I'm sort of getting a sense that there were certain things that didn't land for you. You know, this Hera thing. Do you think that that was something that Dave was just like, okay, there's boxes we have to check off? Do you know what I mean? And maybe if he had perhaps more time or had set it up earlier, that it could have been a little more natural. Overall, what are your thoughts?
I don't, because Jedi Knight happened. Jedi Knight was obviously the first episode after the hiatus, and for me that was a bit of an oh no moment, because I was like, I don't agree with anything that they're doing right now, so maybe this show that I love is going to end really badly. But the finale for me ended up being, the finale was beautiful. I loved the finale. It was like really weird and like soulful, and it was sort of like the embodiment of Rebels. I'm a bit iffy on the epilogue, mainly because of Jacen, because that's another trope that I'm like, but I'm sort of coming around to that. I'm more ambivalent, whereas at first I was like hatred. Like I literally started crying. I hated it so much. Yeah. So I've come around to it. I'm calming down. I'll be fine with him in a while. But yeah, they're talking about Hera specifically. She has been handled very unevenly for the entire run of the show. Like, she is this incredible character who is like steeped in Star Wars history, because like her dad is Jacen Syndulla. Right. She's from Ryloth, grew up in the occupation of Ryloth in the Clone Wars. She probably met Anakin. She probably met Padme. Well, maybe, I don't know. Her dad's like high ranking, whatever. She knows Numa. She will have met Ahsoka probably when she was younger. She met Mace Windu, I'm sure. You know, she's got all these connections. And then obviously at some point she was probably recruited by Ahsoka. So she's got all this history and this space to be explored. Plus the fact that she is an incredibly, like... We always talk about wanting strong female characters, but what we actually want is complex characters. And what we have in Hera is a complex woman, because she is the best pilot in the galaxy. Fight me. I don't care what anyone says. You can fight me.
She's fight her in the comment sections. Fight away.
I'm ready. Yeah. She's the best pilot. She's a tactician. She's brilliant. She's, you know, rebel soul. She's the heart of this, like the actual beating heart of the ship. And she's a key component in the rebellion forming and becoming a successful operation against the Empire. But on top of that, she's warm, and she's got this maternal instinct. Like, she's not motherly, which people keep saying, and I'm like, no. But she's maternal. She collects lost souls and she raises them up, and she gives them drive and purpose and helps them fulfill their full potential. Because that's what the entire crew of the Ghost is. They're a crew of lost souls. So she's got all these depths and these complexities, and there's all these different angles to play her, but she keeps being put in boxes of being like the mother, the pilot, and it's like she's a spectrum of things. So a lot of the time over Rebels, it sometimes felt like we would get somewhere interesting with her, and then they drag it back. And then for me, that really became evident in this last half season, because obviously we ended the first half of season 4 with her being a general, leading this attack on Lothal, wearing this amazing flight suit, getting captured. You know, Thrawn respects and admires her, admittedly, like, from a colonial point of view of how fascinating this barbaric savage is. But he has this respect for her, and you know he was psyched when he found out about her promotion.
Totally.
But then we got into this last half season, and we had her drugged and tortured, and it was played for comedy and romance.
Yeah.
And it's like, when I've brought this up, people have been like, oh, well, Kanan was drugged and tortured. It's like, yeah, but the drugging wasn't shown to have a lasting impact. It wasn't shown to be funny. Like, when we've seen it, we've seen Leia be drugged, we've seen Han being, like, torture and drugging has a disturbing precedence in Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely.
Still. But nothing so prolonged. Like, she was on screen being viscerally tortured far longer than any other male character. And people are like, oh, well, a woman did it. It's like, it doesn't really matter who did the torturing. What matters is that the writers decided to put a woman in this situation and explicitly show it. And then they drugged her. And she was tripping balls for that entire episode. Like, she was off her face. And Vanessa Marshall gave the most incredible, beautiful, nuanced performance. But it doesn't change the fact that the writers decided that Hera Syndulla was going to spend that episode off her face against her will. And that it would be funny and that it would be romantic. And that is really, really poor and upsetting decision. And then the fact that they did that purposely to force Hera into this like emotional state where she could open up to Kanan and like declare her heart's content. And it's like, it's meaningless. Like, okay, so when she finally says I love you or whatever, Kanan's like, oh, it must be the drugs talking. She's like, no, it's me, it's all me. And it's like, even if by that point the drugs have worn off, and even though she says it is, I don't believe it, because that's not how that stuff works. She has still been like artificially driven to this point of declaration in a way that is inorganic, and it goes against her character. Like, if they had had Hera naturally come to this emotional state where she can tell Kanan, it would have been more impactful, where they could actually have shared that moment and they could have shared that emotion. It would have had depth, it would have had meaning, it wouldn't have been deeply disturbing and like extremely upsetting. And then it would have potentially meant that Kanan's death I'm not very happy with. I don't think it was handled very well. Like, it was animated beautifully, like
right.
I love when his eyes came back, the music, but it still felt ultimately very hollow and like not checking boxes, like you said, but it's like, we want to get this done, okay, let's just do it.
Right.
Like, it felt a little perfunctory. And I don't think it's checking boxes, but it's like, we want to have this happen, so we'll just like force them there instead of letting things evolve, letting things flow, letting things be characterful. And then the following episode, they had Hera be like completely shattered, which was like the opposite end of the spectrum. And again, it's like, oh well, Hera's broken now. So you broke Hera, you like artificially ruined her and forced her into this position, and then you just broke her.
Yeah.
Good job. So that was upsetting. And then, I mean, I love World Between Worlds, but Hera didn't have anything to do with that, and that was frustrating, but it's been pretty common all the way through Star Wars Rebels. But then the whole, everything that I've just said about Jedi Knight, and it is coming from my own experiences as a woman, as someone who has been drugged against my will and has had like unpleasant experiences happen. So I'm coming from a very personal, like very painful place.
Sure.
But all of that within the episode, to then be like, she's got a kid. She was pregnant all along, and now she's got a baby, and she's not alone. It's like, she wouldn't have been alone because she's got her family, you know, these lost souls that she's. You decided to have this pregnant character tortured and drugged. Optics are super shady on there, guys. Super duper shady.
Yeah, it's funny because I'll be honest with you, like, it's not something. And once again, I spoke to this. I don't know if we said this. This might have been in the bonus video, but I was like, dude, men can be daft. And, you know, honestly, I appreciate the insight because it's not something that I thought about. You know what I mean? It's really not. I thought about the Jedi Knight episode, which I absolutely love. I didn't think of it so much. Look, I think it's a measure of contrivance because it felt like to me, and this is one of my complaints about Rebels, was that Dave sort of stepped back, right? In 2016, he stepped back and he's now in charge of sort of all animated stuff. And so he's not like show running anymore. And it felt like... I'm sorry?
He stepped back in for season 4. He like stepped
back
for
Right, but even then, it sort of felt like to me when he did step back in, it was only for the last half of the season. And I don't know that to be true, but that's just the vibe that I got from it. And so it sort of felt like to me he was coming in and being like, we got to hit all these points, you know, checking the boxes, as I said. And so I felt a measure of that in what was happening between Hera and Kanan. But I definitely didn't have the perspective that you had. And I definitely didn't think about the fact that she was pregnant during that scene.
She was, when she was drugged and tortured, she was pregnant at Scarif, when she was at Scarif, she would have been about to drop. Like, she would have been basically at full term, probably. You know, she was pregnant, fighting a war. She's a single mother on the front lines. Like, being a single mother, like, again, personal perspective as the daughter of a single mother, my mom had very little social, like, support when she was raising me. She's very much, like, on her own. Hera's got this incredible network of, like, her crew and the rebellion, and she's got all of this, but even then, her support network is always like at risk of dying at any moment. And I like this is not really something that you're expected to consider. And like obviously people who have babies in wartime, like it happens, but it's just I feel like they didn't consider this. They just went, okay, we want this here, and then we're going to skip to here, and they didn't really sort of make that connection. Like maybe the kids spent a lot of time with Sabine on Lothal, but even then it just makes me very uncomfortable. And then there's like this because we have that episode where she spends the whole thing just like racked with guilt and utterly broken by grief. So then the pregnancy for me then becomes like this whole guilt thing, and it's very uncomfortable.
We're gonna move on to the next topic. This is all about The Last Jedi, and of course the divide, boom, 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 the fissure in the fan base. And look, it's a reality. Whether or not it's fair, it's a reality. And so I want to talk about it. And I guess the first question is just because you and I have not actually spoken about this specifically, but I want to know, A, what do you think about The Last Jedi? And B, what has your perception been of the fan divide? Like where, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think of it? Are you seeing it across the pond? Can I say that? Is that too American?
To be fair, I'm across the pond, but we're all in the same fandom. Like, fandom has no boundaries.
It connects and binds us.
Have the internet.
Yes.
The force around us.
Amen.
I mean, first of all, I loved The Last Jedi, which was really nice and really surprising. 'Cause obviously, I worked on it.
Right.
I read a draft of the script.
Those costumes looked great, by the way.
We were robbed. We were robbed of an Oscar nom. Just saying. Like, legit, even ignoring my bias, yeah, it should have been nominated rather than Beauty and the Beast. What the fuck?
Right.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
But, what was it? Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. For me, I feel like with new Star Wars, we have Rebels was first out the gate. For me, The Force Awakens didn't work because it felt like a very safe way to draw people in. It was just sort of like, we're gonna just keep it known. We're not gonna go crazy here. So Rebels, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi feel very statementy. Like we've got new places to go. We've got new things to explore, and they're all very different. We've got very different ways to go, and they all feel like they're not afraid to do things, which is exciting. Because obviously I said the Rebels finale was very weird, but it was perfect Star Wars Dave Filoni weird. Like it was good that it was weird.
Space whales.
Star Wars weird. And The Last Jedi was pretty weird. And then sort of the Rogue One was sort of the flip side of that. It was very grounded. It was very real. So we have these different things, and I feel it makes me feel really excited. The Last Jedi genuinely excited me. And it moved me, and like I cried every time Carrie came on screen. Not gonna lie, and obviously the costumes looked amazing, and because it made me care about these characters, which was unexpected because I did not care about any of them, except obviously like Leia and Luke. But even then, I'm like, I've always been like, we had the original trilogy, their story was told. I'm good. I want new stories,
right?
New people. I didn't need to revisit them. I didn't need to see them old. I didn't need any of that. But obviously I still love them, and I love the way they were presented in The Last Jedi. I really liked sort of the evolution points of them. So yeah, I loved it. I do think it's really interesting how it's just like sent the fandom into like hysterics.
I know. I could not have anticipated it. And you know what's funny is like, so we did a lot of obviously on the channel, I did a lot of coverage sort of leading up to it. And I actually did a series of live streams, which were called The Last Jedi live streams. Yeah, I thought it was cool. But so I know, right? So we did these live streams. We were breaking down all the theories, all the thoughts, everything that had. And I remember on the last episode, when we're sitting there with James Rosile from the Rebel Scum podcast, and we're talking about it, and I'm like, man, none of this is going to happen in the movie. Like, none of these theories are going to happen. And the only one I bought into is Raylo, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I'll just be completely honest with you. When I first walked out of the theater, I was confused. I was conflicted. Because
Really?
Oh yeah, because although I love the movie, I've actually I saw it 5 times in theaters, and I absolutely love the movie. And I've been, sort of chastised online for that opinion.
How dare you enjoy a Star Wars?
I know, right? But to me, I do. The thing is, there are things in the movie that I have issues with, and so I sort of have this perspective of like understanding where people are coming from. Do you know what I mean?
But the thing is that like it, don't like it, move on.
Right.
Like, get over it. The thing that everyone's like, if they don't like, because Star Wars is huge. It's 41 years old now. Well, nearly. It's nearly 41 years old. There's 9 films now, 2 shows. We've got more shows coming, endless books, endless comics books. We've got an entire alternate universe in the EU. So, like, there's this all of this stuff, and if one thing doesn't work for you, get over it.
Definitely.
Basically, because just go back and play with the bit that you like.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It's something that we say a lot too. Like James said this thing. I think he was on the show I think 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Look, it's like a Band-Aid. Like if you don't like it, just rip it off and heal. Like you just gotta move past it." Because there's this weird thing going on, and I'm sure you're aware of it. But there's this weird thing where they want it altered. Like fans somehow believe that now they have the power, the right, the ability to sort of change it to make Disney alter things because of their dislike for it.
Yeah, like I think it is something. I think this whole negative reaction, I don't think is as big as people think it is. I think it's a bunch of people who are being very, very loud and obnoxious and aggressive, and they're starting these petitions being like, erase the film, edit the film, get rid of the woman, get rid of this, that, and the other. And it's like, this is literally Carrie Fisher's last film. You want to get rid of it?
Right.
Okay, gonna listen to you. So yeah, there's it is an intense sense of entitlement, and it's ridiculous, and it's making us all look bad. It is the minority, and I think also there's this thing I've encountered, especially from EU fans, and like if you like the EU is still there to enjoy. And like I understand if the things that you like from EU are not being included, but that's because it's the new EU. But the thing where they act like they're more superior and they're a better fan, so their opinions count more than yours. And so because they like the EU and they didn't like The Last Jedi, so their views are more legitimate.
Right. I've run into that myself, yeah.
These people didn't agree. I hope Rian Johnson's taking notes. I hope Disney's taking notes. And like, but they've made a lot of money. Like, people are still trying to spin that The Last Jedi lost money, and it's like, it didn't.
Oh no,
it made more money. It made more money than Justice League did in its entire run in like the first 2 weeks or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was huge.
It still made the money, and then it's like it's made less money than The Force Awakens. It's doomed. And it's like, but we're seeing a natural plateauing because The Force Awakens was the first Star Wars in 10 years. Plus, it was the first Star Wars from Disney. First Star Wars with no George Lucas.
Yeah.
So obviously, it was going to be an inflated audience because everyone was going to see it because for curiosity's sake, to be part of this whole cultural moment that everyone wants to be a part of. It was never going to be a true indicator of like the future of Star Wars. And then Rogue One was obviously a different thing. And then The Last Jedi comes out. And obviously it makes less money because people who didn't like The Force Awakens and are mega fans were like, I don't want to see that.
Right.
And novelty's worn off, so we're now seeing more sort of reasonable, more sustainable numbers, and it's still making so much money. Like, Disney has completely recouped its costs that it spent in this film. So like, chill, people.
Oh, definitely. So let me ask you this then, because you said something interesting. You said that you don't think it's quite as bad as it's being perceived in your personal life. Because this was what's interesting for me is, so I know a lot of Star Wars fans, right? And I hang out with a lot of Star Wars fans. You know, I do content with Star Wars fans. There have always been, like, The Force Awakens, when there were haters of The Force Awakens, I didn't see it too much. There were some people in my circles that didn't like it, but they're just those kind of people that don't like people. What's up?
I hated The Force Awakens.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess what I mean is, I didn't feel it the way I feel it with this one. Now, you know what I'm saying? Like, I actually legitimately have about half of the Star Wars fans that I personally know have a big problem with the movie. So in your, like, personal life or like your fandom, have you experienced it? Like, what do you think is going, do you think it's real? Like,
I think it is real. It is definitely real. I think we're seeing a whole bunch of different things happening, because I think when The Force Awakens came out, it was that thing of playing safe, I think. So the people who had issues with it were like, ugh. But also, it was the first one out the gate, so you gotta wait and see. Right. And also, the lot of people who are having fits right now over The Last Jedi were probably fine with The Force Awakens. And so, you know, the rabid monsters weren't going batshit over The Force Awakens because they were like, cool, I'm sure. I don't know. In my experience, though, of the people that I know, I'm not sure I'd say the majority of them, but a lot of people that I know, both online and in real life, would not count The Force Awakens very highly amongst like all of Star Wars. It's not a high-ranking film. A lot of them don't think it's very good. Or think it's extremely weak. I mean, obviously, it's a mix of stuff, but in my experience, it's not hugely loved from my. But I mean, every circle is going to have, of like people who regularly interact, are going to have their different biases and different leanings. So you inevitably end up in an echo chamber. And then I think with The Last Jedi, it was bolder because it was doing new things. So there's more things to take issue with. Like, the main issue with The Force Awakens was that it was a retread of A New Hope. It was unimaginative. The story was like, the writing was meh. You know, J.J. Abrams is a good director, but he's not very creative. I mean, he's creative, but he's a nostalgia peddler. That's right. What he does.
I agree.
All of big screen work is riffing on something that has already been done. And then Rian Johnson comes in and he's bold and he's beautiful. And then also he's bringing in a new visual language as well. Like, they got rid of all the swipes and everything, and people are taking issue with that. It's like, it needs to evolve. Star Wars needs to evolve. So it was almost revolutionary as a film, and it was intended to be revolutionary. I mean, obviously it's not, well, it's about resistance, so, you know, it's a little bit revolutionary. But in terms of, it was 2017, so when we shot the first thing. But Star Wars can't keep doing the same thing. It can't keep living in the same visual language of 1977. It's got to come up 40 years and be more relevant visually, in terms of message, aesthetically, you know, everything. I still think there's a lot of things that need to evolve. But he was doing new things. So because it's something new, people are going, I don't like it. And then you've got the whole, like, MRA types, I don't know, the real fanboys, whatever, who, you know, it is a film that's driven largely by women and people of color. And the white boys are the bad guys.
Yep.
So they're seeing themselves being held up in this very negative light, and they don't like it. I do think a large part of it is that certain people are seeing themselves reflected where they don't want to be seeing them, because they've always seen themselves as the good guys. And it's like, no, you look like Kylo.
Yeah. I definitely see what you're saying. To speak on that briefly, because that's something that honestly I actually don't really see in the film a lot. Like, and to be honest, like, the last couple times I viewed it, I sort of went in like with a pad and a pen and was really trying to like take it, because, like, for instance, like the Holdo character, which, by the way, I'm not a big fan of. Just, I felt like she was a contrivance of the plot. But so there's scenes with her where she is shot heroically, right, and Poe is shot unheroically, but it totally makes sense. Everything to me that was done was contextual. You know what I mean? When it comes to that. And by the way, the Empire in the original movies is all old white British dudes. You know what I mean? Like that was the casting call. You know what I mean? And
It's white British dudes, but now now they're younger, which I think is significant, and they're using a different language. They are very purposely modeled on neo-Nazis.
right.
The first order. They're not modeled on Nazis, they're neo-Nazis. And then I think that's also actually something that is worth considering, is that between The Force Awakens coming out and between The Last Jedi coming out, the Trump happened.
Yes.
And that has radically altered everything. Like, it's altered media, but it's also altered our reactions to media. Everything now is so much more reactionary, and it has noticeably been seen to be more reactionary in the wake of Trump winning that election and in the wake of Brexit on this side of the pond.
I totally agree.
Like, everything reactionary, everything is more politicized on both sides, from the people who want progress and the people who are afraid of it, these people who are taking issue at Stockholm and throwing gigantic strops. I mean, this is some of the people that I know who don't like The Last Jedi. I mean, you don't like a film, you're totally legit. And I know some people feel that it's a very miserable film because they don't think it's got a message of hope. For me, it's a very hopeful, bright, optimistic film. But a lot of people, it's that EU thing of where they had this specific vision of Han or Luke or Leia or whatever, in place of that, or whatever. And I think there are things to consider, that it's a white director who sort of hustled a lot of his people of color cast, Finn, Rose, and Poe into sort of one element of the plot. And like, there's progress in the film, and then there's things that try to be progressive and fail. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't think anyone's saying it is, but it is a very political film, and it's a very complicated, messy thing that's like impossible to unpack if you end up just like going into circles and going into, and you inevitably offend someone by expressing an opinion. But I do think the negative backlash is not as aggressive as it actually is being seen. The really, really dying Disney rules Star Wars change this film is a small minority. I mean, maybe not a small minority, but a minority.
Yeah, I tend to agree, actually. The more like that I sort of investigate it, I do think that it's just some people that are very vocal. And interestingly, I do think it has a lot to do with the political climate, because
it's to do with that.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because, it's definitely on both sides. What's funny is like not to go down that rabbit hole per se, but Star Wars has sort of, and this is the last thing I'll say, and we'll move on to Raylo. I want to let you go. I've had you for so long. But my thing is, Star Wars has sort of always been political. If you don't know the history of what George was talking about, when it comes to Vietnam was a big thing for him, and also imperialistic, America and England, they are sort of, look, that's the empire. And I always tell people this too. I'm like, look, in a lot of ways, America is the empire. You know what I mean? Which people don't necessarily want to hear, but... No,
but America are the bad guys in the original trilogy and in the new trilogy, prequel trilogy even. Like, the prequel trilogy is about the Bush administration. The original trilogy was made in response to Vietnam and to America colonizing, warmongering,
Yep.
This new trilogy has the potential. I mean, the new one is beginning to feel increasingly about the way we are now. We have to see what episode 9 does, because J.J. Abrams is coming back. So is he going to continue what Rian Johnson laid down, or is he going to undo it all and go back to the safety of The Force Awakens?
That's the question, right? That's the big one.
It was an intensely political film that was meant to be a little bit political, but because of when it came out, it ended up being incredibly political. and it's not a political film. It's like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and you know that's
Sorry.
the thing though. It's sort of that's my argument is that it always has been, and I would say that if you think maybe it was handled a little bit better by George, maybe not so right in your face, there could be some truth there. But I also think that because of the environment that we're in, the microscope is on these things, and so I think that all of the themes and everything that are sort of erupting out of it are they're hot button topics because of the time that we live in. And by the way, too, and I just want to say to everybody out there, because Xena, I have a lot of subscribers from all sorts of different political places, right? You know what I mean? Conservatives, liberals. I think you're both crazy, but I have people all over the spectrum, right? And so what I always like to tell people is, look, what's happening right now is perfectly natural. It is a necessary step to the other side of this, which will be a much better society all around. But we got to ruffle feathers. We got to figure this out. Both sides need to be heard. You spoke to the echo chamber effect. I really think that's a big problem with not only fandoms, which we're seeing, all over across the board. That's a big problem with fandoms, but just in general as a human being. You cannot silence someone just because they do not share your opinion. And my subscribers know this. I like to sort of play the middle because I truly am in the middle of most of these
Okay,
issues.
I do think it is an issue though. You need to be aware that by being quite substantially both sides must speak, which yes, opinions should be expressed, but that doesn't mean that hate should be expressed. And the problem is that in the current Western political climate, we have reached this point where everyone is so busy yelling about free speech that you cannot shut down anyone who expresses hatred and violence. And I mean, it's from like the huge political issues to people attacking people because they don't like a Star Wars film, or attacking a woman who expresses that she is deeply upset by the treatment of a female character in a kids' cartoon show because it reignites a 10-year-old trauma. Like it very legitimately triggered me, and
Sure.
things that when people are they're not looking for it because you don't want to go looking for that. It just happens. It hits you in your face, and then you spend 2 weeks crying and being miserable.
Yeah.
So playing the middle ground is fine, but you have to be careful. And the problem as well is that it is leading to this environment where it is believed that everything must be loud and everything is reactionary. We no longer have shades of grey. Everything is now black and white, and everything must be expressed at the top of your voice against everyone, shutting everyone down. And I mean, I really do people who come and mansplain at me about like women's rights and stuff because like get out. But yeah, I think that's why we're seeing this super aggressive response to The Last Jedi, because we have these people in power who express themselves in this very aggressive, reactionary way, and it is filtering down to all people on all sides in response to every.
Yeah. All right, everybody. It's time for those fan questions. I got some really good ones that I'm very excited to go into. But I do want to say after fan questions, I'm putting in a little segment where Xena just sort of talks about her love of Star Wars, why she loves it so much. I think it's really cool. So make sure to stay to the end for that. But let's go to the first question, which came to us from Justin May. He was talking about the world between worlds and Palpatine reshaping reality. He wanted to ask me, what do I think Palpatine would have done to reshape reality, and would his focus have been on making sure Vader did not lose on Mustafar? Now, I absolutely love this question. It's very interesting. So, what would he have done to reshape reality? I'm really not sure. So, as much as we do know about Palpatine and we get like more little tidbits here and there, and Rebels did a great job of giving us cool stuff from the world between worlds, we don't know exactly what his motivation is. I think that he wants to live forever. I think that all Sith sort of desire immortality. So that could have been one thing. I think that he's also trying to discover the great mystery, like what is the Force for? And as much as Palpatine does study the dark side, he does study the light side as well. So he's aware of the light side at different aspects of it. I mean, the world between worlds would really seem to be a cosmic force, more light sided thing. And so I don't think that I would say that he would bring Vader back or have Vader not be defeated on Mustafar. I mean, One thing that he would probably do is look into the future because I believe all time is existing at once there, and he would look to see how he was defeated and stop that from happening. What that would probably do is make him go back and perhaps not choose Vader. Now, we know okay, so we know very little about exactly what happened with Anakin, whether the Force birth was created by Pelagus or whether that Force birth was created by Palpatine. And you see, Vader and what he does actually does serve Palpatine's purpose, at least for a long, long time. This is destroying the Jedi. This is establishing the Empire, you know, creating control and different things like that. I tell you this, he would probably stop the Death Star from being destroyed. He would probably prevent Vader from turning, might just go kill Luke and Leia. But this is all sort of in hindsight, right? So if you really think like broad scoping, like what would he want to do? He might go all the way back to when the rule of two was first established, or to when the Sith were established, or to when first Jedi, with, the bowgun and the Abalash, and he might literally go and try to teach the first Force users that were formulating the Jedi code and then later the Sith code. He might literally go back there and try to explain things from his perspective and make it so there was a strong, united order of Force users that just existed almost like gods within the galaxy. And like, I can't imagine this actually working out, but I can see in his head this being the case and establishing the Sith as sort of this predominant thing. He would want a Sith empire with him as its emperor forever. But like, what's interesting in that scenario is, you know, part of power, part of the reason that power is so attractive is that it comes to us from a perspective of lacking power, of lacking control. And so it formulates what power is, the fact that you don't have it. And I'm reminded of this really cool story that Alan Watts would talk about. And so he would say, imagine a scenario in which you could dream whatever you wanted to dream, could create reality any way you wanted it to. And this kind of, you know, would be what Chief Palpatine would be doing, right? So eventually, you know, you will at first you would start experiencing every pleasure you could. You would start doing everything that you wanted to experience, having amazing things happen, you know, doing amazing things, experiencing pleasure, all these things. You would run the gamut of everything that you believe to be an incredible experience. You would do all of those things, but eventually, and if you're talking about immortality and you're talking about forever, eventually you would come to a place where all of that would seem really trite and boring. So then you would start to slowly put things into your reality that were like things you didn't know the outcome of, you know, surprises, things that he says would be like a close shave getting out of them, right? And so when you follow that line of thought, you would eventually get to a point where you are living the exact life that you are living right now. And so some Eastern philosophy believes that we are all actually gods. Like Hinduism at its purest is this idea that we are all Shiva. We are all this thing that is just the universe and incredibly powerful. But we have chosen to forget that because it is actually more pleasurable to live a mortal life with the idea that you have all of these confines and all of these things that you cannot do. And so that, you know, that's sort of like a offshoot of thought there. But I think that the problem with this and why the Sith were never able to accomplish this, and there's a lot of Eastern philosophy in here. The reason is because that even if he had his way and tried to form reality perfectly, he would realize he has no idea what perfect reality would be like for him. But I think that his desire to do it is just a natural extension of the thing that drives the Sith. It is the idea of power, control, wanting to bend the Force and the galaxy to their will and not necessarily be a natural part of it. So, Justin, I really appreciate that question because it's an awesome idea. And I'm glad that you're paying attention to some of the things that I'm saying. Because, yes, he wanted to reshape reality in the Tarkin novel. That clearly ties into the idea of the world between worlds. It's a very cool idea. So, thank you so much for that question, Justin May. I really dug thinking about it. I thought it was really cool. So, thank you, brother. The next question comes to us from Stefix19. Her question is about Snoke and Luke and the moment when he was going to kill Kylo. And she was talking about basically how if Kylo's so strong that he can connect the minds of Rey and Kylo Ren from all the way across the galaxy, if he can do this, then, I mean, is it possible that the thought that Luke had about killing Kylo, and maybe even the vision of the future that Luke received when he looked into the mind of Ben, was that all manipulated by Snoke? And Steph X, this is actually something I've talked about several times because not only do I think that, I'm pretty darn sure that that's what happened. So my mind is like, yes, that is exactly what happened. Snoke was toying with Luke Skywalker in that moment, and he was trying to supplant the idea of eliminating Kylo right then and there. And this idea that the thought vanished like a fleeting shadow or something like that, that sort of is another hint that I think that it is Snoke. Now, something that was really interesting in the novelization of The Last Jedi, that it is revealed that Luke did not want to reform the Jedi. For a long time, he decided he was not going to form the new Jedi Order. Instead, he went kind of Indiana Jones style and tried to uncover the secrets of what the Force actually was and what the Jedi should actually do. And Snoke says in the novel that that was to his absolute surprise and shock, and it was not good for Snoke because, you see, this idea, this thing, like where the light rises, the darkness to meet it, that cycle, the Sith are incredibly dependent, and not just the Sith, but people on the dark side of the Force, they are dependent upon that. Luke's third lesson, which was the nerd card question for the video earlier today, which I dropped. Luke's third lesson to Rey was only act if you can maintain balance. And that had to do with like the villagers, the pillaging and stuff, and the fact that Rey wanted to break that up. There are always consequences to your action. And so one of the things that the Jedi do is they only act when they can maintain balance. This is something that like the Yoda's Jedi, those people, they have sort of lost their way with that. And they did all of these things that sort of fed into the power of Palpatine. And so the reason is revealed in the novel that the reason that Luke formulates the new Jedi is because of his nephew. All because of Ben Solo. He needed a way to give legacy to Ben, to give Ben the teaching that he needed, because Ben is so strong. He's so powerful within the Force. He's got the Skywalker blood, but sort of beyond that, he's just naturally gifted, right? He's so strong. And midichlorian counts probably through the roof, maybe even higher than Vader's, who knows? But idea here is that because of that, Luke decided to reestablish the Jedi Order. That gave Snoke power. So formulating the Jedi, causing this fissure in the Force, this sort of surge in light side power, that helped Snoke. And so it's very possible that that gave Snoke more power, and he was able, using his vast knowledge of the dark side, to start to manipulate Luke, because Luke had sort of opened himself up to this by formulating the new order. And that, it comes with all sort of things. Like you make rules, you make stipulations, you do certain things, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm convinced that that is exactly what happened, Steph X19. So thank you so much for the question. Guys, I'm going to leave that here for now because it's been a really long episode, and I apologize about that. I'm going to get better at like interviewing, you know what I mean? Because like I probably didn't tell Xena that like the time frame that we were trying to stick to, and I was so interested in what she was saying that I didn't really think about it. So I'm going to leave that here for now. And like I said, watch the end of the video. Xena goes into her love of Star Wars. I go into my love of Star Wars. It connects and it binds us and all of that goodness. So thank you guys, and check out the rest of the video. And look, before I let you go here, this is one of the things I'm going to talk about. We had said this off camera, or maybe we said it on the Patreon video. I don't remember, but we were talking about like our love of Star Wars. You know what I mean? And why we love it so much. So I kind of want to just end there. Just talk briefly, because like I said, I've had you for so long, briefly about like your love of Star Wars and what it's kind of accomplished or done for your life. You said you had a dream job, working on Star Wars movies. For me, would be a dream job. You had that opportunity, and your cosplay is amazing. And to me, it represents an expression of your love of these things, which is so cool and clearly so authentic. You know what I mean? You can see the emotion in your face when you're talking about certain elements of it. And that's so cool. So, I mean, talk about that just a little bit. Like, where did that come from? Why do you love Star Wars so much?
I mean, Star Wars is about love. So, it's about finding people. It's about going on a journey from nothing and finding your purpose and your drive. And I mean, Star Wars has given me my purpose and my drive, because I mean, I literally don't remember the first time I saw Star Wars, because I don't remember things from before I was 3, right. Or 2, or so. But when I was older, like I said, I discovered costume. I discovered filmmaking because of Star Wars. I became interested in that, and then from that, I decided to go into costume. I did my degree in costume. I've been working in the film industry ever since. I'm now doing my master's. Whilst working in the film industry, it's a total nightmare. So it's given me my drive and my purpose, and that's been inspired by characters. And I think as well, it's spoken to me at different ways at different points in my life, because when I was very little, it was just a fun adventure. It was Luke and Leia and Han fighting the Empire, yay! Then I got a bit older and the prequels came out, and it became about the complexities of growing up, because I grew up alongside Anakin, and Padme. Padme was inspirational, so it was inspirational. It was about growing up. It was about the challenges of life, of challenges of love, in all these different formats. And then 10 years went by. I kind of fell out of love with Star Wars, and then I discovered Star Wars Rebels, and then that refocused me, that redirected me. I felt a little bit lost. I was really, really ill, because I've got chronic fatigue, MES. So I had been diagnosed for slightly less than a year when I discovered Rebels. So it was like a bright light that sort of helped me get through it. Because I had Hera and I had Kanan, and they're great characters, incredible voice acting. But I really heavily identified with them because we're all aged. Hera was in her early 20s in season 1, Kanan was in his late 20s, I was in sort of my mid 20s. So we're all of an age, and I understand their journeys, because obviously whilst I hadn't been through war and genocide, or like the trauma of having your Jedi master murdered in front of you or whatever, and literally fighting a rebellion, but I understood their trials and difficulties and their histories and how they overcome them from like a mundane perspective. So I learned from them how to cope. I learned to recognize things within me, and I learned to find hope again. Hope and drive and fight and love, because then I fell back into the fandom. So I found people, I reconnected, and that's what Star is about. It's about connection with the Force, with community, with people, because there's always these found families in the Clone Wars, in Rebels, in the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the new trilogy, people coming together and forming these new like family units, as it were, from out of nowhere, which I think is really exciting. And then there's the creative aspect, the more literal creative aspect, where it's this incredible galaxy, this universe of potential, and anything could happen there within limits, the Star Wars limits.
Yeah.
And so, the number of people who have been inspired by that to then become directors, costume people, visual effects people, props makers, and then there's people who do it professionally, the people who do it as a hobby, the people who do it as both, because we're insane, is incredible, because there's so much to play with and try out, and people who have been inspired to learn new things from Star Wars is amazing. And then it's just like a fundamentally human story, which is exciting. And so being able to share that with people in different ways. And then you were saying earlier, I can't remember if we recorded it or not, where you love Star Wars in this very real way, and you express that through your videos and your writing and all the other stuff that you do. And I express that through my cosplay and through my work and through arguing with people on the internet. So there's all these different ways that we can share that, and we come together and share it in all these different ways, and then you end up at somewhere like Celebration, and it's just, it's love.
It was. It is. I I really appreciate that answer. That's going to be like the little commercial I cut together for our episode, which I'll play on my show throughout the week.
That line that Rose says in The Last Jedi, and I know a lot of people hate it, and it's a very cheesy line, but about defeating things, fighting for love rather than hate.
Saving what we love, not destroying what we hate, I think. Yeah.
Yes, that. And I know I get why people don't like that, because it is a very, very, it's a hokey, cheesy line.
It's a little heavy-handed.
But
that's Star Wars.
It is Star Wars. That is Star Wars. That's what it's been about since day one. That's like Luke's entire journey. Because when he goes to face off the Emperor, he puts his lightsaber down and he saves his dad. He doesn't fight through hate. He stops fighting through love. And then we see that with Luke and Han. We see that in the prequels. And these new films, you know, Finn and Rey, whatever relationship they have, they're fighting. Rey's entire thing is fighting through love. Rose is fighting through love. Holdo's sacrificing herself for the love of the rebellion, for the love of Leia. In Rebels, Kanan's sacrificing himself for his family. Hera learning to fight, not just because it's the right thing. That's one of the things I love about Hera, is that she's fighting for a cause because it's the right thing to do. But one of her key arcs is learning to fight for herself as well as for the galaxy, to learn that it's okay to have the personal with the like professional. So she learns to fight for what she loves as well as for everyone else, and that, I think that's important. Learning to and it's not just about fighting, it's about learning to live in a place of love. I say, as an angry, aggressive person, but it's difficult, but it's something to aspire to. Maybe.
I like that. No, I like that. That's very inspirational. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for being on here. Before I let you go, too, where can people go find your cool stuff on the interwebs?
So you can find me on Twitter at XenaDD and at Poetry in Costume, or on Instagram at Poetry in Costume, or on my website, which is poetryincostume.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, being a part of it. Maybe I'll snag you again for a future episode, and we'll make a bunch more people mad. It'll be fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.